So, I love themed lists. I've even played a Necron list with 10 pylons in it. So, themed lists are my thing. And now we've got the new Cult of the Cryptek, Army of Renown. However, do Games Workshop actually know how to make a themed list? It's coming right up.
Necrons!
Nick speaking, and welcome to this video. Right, today we have the new White Dwarf with the new Necron Army of Renown in it. In the previous White Dwarf we had the Annihilation Legion, a destroyer cult themed army. In that army I had 60 flayed ones because they were, well, objective secure, and it helped the list quite a lot. Plus, I already play a themed 60 flayed one list. So I was very excited when the Cult of the Cryptek came out, knowing that it was going to be all about Canoptek units. Overall, I thought Games Workshop did pretty well with the Annihilation Legion Army of Renown. It was half decent on the table, you had a chance to win, it wasn't ultra competitive, which themed lists generally aren't. There are a few things that I would change about the Annihilation Legion, in particular the stratagem cost and the command protocol rules, where ultimately they were written before the data slate, and I think Games Workshop should have maybe addressed that, but on the whole I was happy with it. However, I think Games Workshop did miss the mark a little bit with this particular Army of Renown. Now I appreciate it's a themed army and they're not going to be ultra competitive. I'm not actually looking for that. I like to have themed armies, but we want a chance on the table. And it's not like Games Workshop don't make good Army of Renowns. I mean, just look at the Orc Speed Freaks, that's pretty awesome. So it would have been nice to have something which maybe could stand up to that. Now I'm not saying that we can't do that with this particular new army, but what I am saying is I think maybe Games Workshop sort of could have done slightly better. However, we've got what we've got, and today we're going to make the most of it. So Games Workshop of course have released this army in the White Dwarf. I bought this, £6.99. There's nothing in there that interests me apart from the Army of Renown. However, I did purchase it because, well, we've got to keep Games Workshop in business, haven't we? Yeah, 5 pages, that's all there was for this army. The previous one was 6 pages, interestingly enough, but yeah, 5 pages. I photocopied mine and I printed them out and sort of bound them in this folder just to make it easier to get to the rules. So what is an Army of Renown? Well, basically it's a new way to play your force. You've got certain restrictions, and if you stick to those restrictions then you get some different benefits. Now the restrictions in this one is mainly the units that you take. So you can only take Cryptek units, Canoptek units, the convergence of Dominion fortification and Necron warriors, plus you have to be in the same dynasty for all of the units, which is, well, pretty standard. You then get the benefits, and the first one is all units gain the Cult of the Cryptek keyword. Now this is different from the Annihilation Legion because we had flayed ones in there which didn't actually benefit from the Destroyer of the Cult keyword. So this one is on all of the units. Now the Crypteks gain the Noble keyword for command protocols, which when you go to the Necron Codex, of course, you have to have a Noble on the table to gain command protocols. However, we've had a new data slate which has changed that word, Noble, to character. So this is going to be using the new data slate and the new command protocols, which means you get an all-game protocol. Now this is very different from the Annihilation Legion, and to be fair, it's better because the Annihilation Legion had its own command protocols in there, and the data slate didn't trump those command protocols, so you still have to be within 6 inches of a character. With this new Destroyer Cult, you don't have to do that, so you can have an all-game protocol and you don't have to be within 6 inches of a character, so much better. Now Games Workshop didn't plan it this way. I mean, the rules in here were probably written 3 or 4 months ago, and well, obviously Games Workshop just gave us the Noble keyword because otherwise we wouldn't be able to have command protocols. But now with the data slate out, as I said, that changes things. But that isn't by design, that's by pure luck. Now we also gain 6 new Warlord traits, and unlike the Annihilation Legion, these aren't dedicated Warlord traits to particular unit types, and we got more of them, so that's nice. There are no relics, however we've got 6 new Arcana. Now I think that's probably a better option, because whilst you have to pay points for the Arcana, you don't have to pay CPs, and well, the game at the moment, you don't have many CPs. And then we have 8 new stratagems, which is the same amount as in the Annihilation Legion. However, all of these stratagems are only 1 CP, so there definitely are some improvements here. Now this army doesn't gain a dynastic code, but you do gain the Tomb Guardians special rule. Effectively, this is our dynasty benefits. So the benefits are we get +1 to our attack's characteristic, so 1 extra attack on all units. That's pretty nice. Plus we can re-roll the 1s on RP. Now of course Necron warriors already have that, but now this is army-wide. Now we're going to talk more about the stratagems and Arcana later in the video, but now I want to move on to actually making a list for this army, because, well, this is where I found that this army actually has a few problems. Now, unlike the Annihilation Legion, we don't get a detachment for free. The Legion had a Vanguard detachment for 0 CPs, and they made Flayed Ones have objective secure, effectively making them our troops. Well, we don't have that with this particular army. Now in this army we can take warriors, and I'm assuming that Games Workshop have done this so that we can have a battalion detachment. Of course, a good way to build a list, and also if your warlord is in there, you don't have to pay any CPs for the detachment. Now the issue with warriors is the unit size, because, well, ideally you need to take units of 20. Big units do better with warriors because of the way RP works. Even if you took small units of 10, you're looking at 130 points for each unit, and you do need 3 units to unlock a battalion. Units of 10 warriors aren't really going to do a lot, probably just camp out on an objective. If warriors were available in units of 5, like they used to be at one point, then I think warriors would be a good choice. Overall, I think Immortals would have been a better choice. However, I can see why Games Workshop have chosen Warriors over Immortals from a thematic point of view, because they're more mindless than Immortals, and that sort of matches the Canoptek type theme. But even so, I don't know that I want to invest all of those points for troops, and that is a problem. Let's face it, this army should be about Canoptek Spiders, Canoptek Scarabs and Canoptek Wraiths. And what I think Games Workshop should have done is given us a free Outrider detachment, and then maybe make Scarabs objective secure, very similar to what they did in the Annihilation Legion. I think that would have been a good move. I mean, even if we did take a battalion detachment, you still only have 3 fast attack slots, so getting Wraiths and Scarabs in your list to a decent quantity, which is what we need in this themed list, it's going to be impossible. The Outrider detachment just works better for this army, even with its limited of 2 HQs, and of course, well, this is Cult of the Cryptek. We want Crypteks in this list, but the good thing about Crypteks, of course, is they have the Dynastic Advisor's special rule. So every Cryptek that you can take another one without taking up a slot. So you can have 4 HQs in an Outrider detachment. Not a problem. Personally, I think I'm going to have to take the Outrider detachment for this army. I want to have Wraiths, I want to have Scarabs in my list. I'm going to have to pay 3 CPs for this detachment. However, there still is a little issue with this detachment. Now, first of all, we need to select a dynasty. I'm going to select Novok, and I'm going to have the All-Game Protocol of +1 to Strength. Now, you don't benefit from both of those protocols because, of course, we lose the Novok keyword. But, yeah, +1 to Strength seems to suit the army quite well. I did consider the Zerican All-Game Protocol +1 to Living Metal, because pretty much most of our models are going to have more than one wound. Could be useful, but I think that +1 to strength just suits the army better. So I started the list with heavy support because we only have one heavy support option. That's the Canoptek Doomstalkers. And this is the slight issue with the Outrider detachments. You only have 2 heavy support slots. And Doomstalkers don't come in units, they only come in single models. So the maximum we can have is 2 Doomstalkers. In 2,000 points, I like to play 3 Doomstalkers, but 2 is the best that I could do. Now potentially Games Workshop could have added an extra rule here, where you could have taken them in units in this particular army, maybe units of 2. I think units of 3 maybe might have been too much. But if GW had said you can have units of 2 Doomstalkers in this army, and well, that means you would need 4 Doomstalkers, and maybe everyone would have gone out and bought an extra Doomstalker because we've all got 3 Doomstalkers, right? Games Workshop, you need to employ me. No, I take that back. I don't want to work for you. I'm very happy doing what I do. Now, I know a lot of people don't like Doomstalkers that much. I haven't found them too bad myself. They have that 4+ invulnerable save. They've got the big gun with the Overwatch benefits, and they're reasonable in points, just 130 points at the moment. They do need some support because they do only hit on a 4+, so you'll need something like a control node nearby to help them shoot. But either way, we have no choice, so 2 Doomstalkers it is. Now Doomstalkers do have their own dedicated stratagem, and it's only 1 CP, as they all are. This allows them to move or fall back and shoot their big gun with no penalties. It's pretty nice, so if you do get into trouble, you do have the option to at least do that. So with no warriors in the list, I'm going to have no guns apart from the Doomstalkers. So I'm going to need guns, and I think the obvious way to get guns in the list is going to be with Canoptek Spiders. And I'm quite used to playing Canoptek Spiders. I've already got quite a number of different Canoptek type themed lists that I've played in the past, and Canoptek Spiders with the particle casters on them, they can do pretty well. And of course we get +1 to attack in this army, so spiders in the assault, they're pretty nasty. And they've got the core keyword, which means of course the Technomancer can bring those back. So I think spiders for sure are in the list. 2 units, I'm going to have guns on them all, and 1 Gloom Prism on one of the spiders in each of the units. Now Canoptek Spiders would really benefit from a control node as well, because their weapon skill and ballistic skill of 4. Now there is a Warlord trait available which might help out our spiders as well. Plus there are 2 stratagems for spiders and another stratagem for the army that works really well with spiders. For 1 CP you can give them an extra 2-inch movement and make them weapon skill 2. That's pretty good. Now if you had the control node on there as well, that means you'll also be negating any -1 to hit special rules. They also have a stratagem to help with their Gloom Prisms. It's 1 CP and you can add 2 to your Deny the Witch result if there's a particular power which is causing you a lot of hurt. This stratagem could be really useful. Now the next stratagem isn't a dedicated spider stratagem, but I think it works best on spiders. It's 1 CP and it gives you an extra 2 AP when shooting with either particle beamers or particle casters. Obviously the beamers on the spiders, an extra 2 AP, it's going to be really useful. Okay, on to fast attack, and I'm sure you've guessed this already. I'm going to have 3 units of 6 Wraiths. Now I'm going to have 1 unit of Wraiths with whip coils and the other 2 units with claws. There's reason for that we'll talk about in a second. Now you've noticed one of my units has 2 particle casters. That's purely for the fact that at the end of this list I had 10 points left over, so I put 2 casters on the Wraiths. Now Wraiths also have 2 stratagems, and this one's really good. This is 1 CP. If you're using your claws to attack, you get an extra AP. Very useful, especially if you're up against Armour of Contempt. And if you're using your whip coils, you can have 1 extra attack. Now of course whip coils are lower in strength, but I've got the Novok Dynasty All-Game Protocol, +1 to strength. You do potentially have the Stratagem, +1 to strength as well, if you need that extra strength. But what you get is 1 extra attack, and of course the Cult of the Crypteks gets 1 extra attack as well, so that's 2 extra attacks on these units. Really good. I'm even considering changing this to 2 units of whip coils and 1 unit of claws. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments box below. Now the next stratagem is also pretty useful. It's a fight on death stratagem, so as long as you haven't fought already, after you die you can play this 1 CP and then you can fight before you're removed from play. The rest of my fast attack slots will be filled out, of course, with Canoptek Scarabs. I've got 2 big units of 9. They're going to go in front of the Canoptek Spiders. The Spiders, of course, can regenerate Scarabs, so that's pretty useful. And 1 unit of 3, and this unit will just be a backfield objective taker. Scarabs also have a stratagem. It's 1 CP. It gives them the translocation special rule, basically allowing them to deep strike. I'm not going to be deep striking mine. It could be fun to do, but the way my list works, I don't think I need to deep strike them. So the list so far leaves me with 365 points, and I need to put some HQs in the list. Ideally, I want to save back 100 points for the list, so I'm looking at spending 265 points on HQs. Looking at the Warlord traits, the one that really stands out to me is Master of the Cult. It's a 9-inch ability, and you're able to give a unit within 9 inches +1 to the attack's hit roll, so +1 to hit. Effectively, this is a control node, which is great because it means you can have the control node on the table, and also you can take this as a Warlord trait. +1 to hit, really useful. Looking at the other Warlord traits, they're okay, but I felt this one is the standout trait, and it's definitely the one that I'm going to take. Now I'm really loving the Plasmancer's Arcana. Now I know that Plasmancers don't get the great reputation that maybe the Chronomancer and Technomancer does, but I've actually used Plasmancers quite a lot. In particular in Canoptek lists, I usually use 2 of them, and they can do quite a lot of damage with those mortal wounds. Now with this Arcana, you roll 6 dice as opposed to 3 for the Plasmancer. Effectively, it's like having 2 Plasmancers on the table, but just with 1 model. So I'm going to take the Plasmancer with that Arcana, and I'm going to give him the Warlord trait to give me that +1. I'm going to put him up front behind a unit of Canoptek Spiders. That allows him to buff those spiders, do those mortal wounds. The buff range is 9 inches, so I could potentially buff a unit of Wraiths if I need to. Now out of interest, you can have a stratagem for 1 CP, which allows you to take 2 pieces of Arcana on 1 model. I've had a look at the other Arcana, and apart from another one, I wasn't that impressed. I mean, they're okay, but not amazing. My next HQ is, of course, the babysitter for the Canoptek Doomstalkers. So I'm going to have a Technomancer with the control node. He's just going to go at the back with those 2 Doomstalkers. I 100% need that because I've only got 2 of them, so I need to be hitting on 3s. My next HQ is going to be another Technomancer. This guy's going to go with the other unit of spiders, and he's going to have the control node as well, because I think those spiders really benefits from that +1 to hit. Now the other piece of Arcana which I liked was called the Neutron Shroud. It's 15 points, but it gives you a 2+ save, and also once per game you can pop it off and it gives you a 3+ invulnerable save. Now it only lasts until the end of the phase, so you have to be careful when you're using it, but obviously you're going to use it once you start getting targeted. So if he's left in the open and you get shot at, you're probably going to pop it off if there's a lot of AP coming in. Now that is very nice, and for 15 points I thought it was worth having. And that leaves me with 100 points left over, and yes, call me crazy, I'm going to take the Fortification, the Convergence of Dominion. Why, Nick? Why? Exactly why? Because this army gives them absolutely 0 buffs whatsoever, and we all know how bad the stones are. They are dreadful. Now I can see why Games Workshop have put them into the army, because obviously it's Cryptek base and Crypteks can move the stones. And well, when I found out that the fortification was in this army, I said to myself, I've got to have it in the army, just for thematic reasons. But also, I think they could be quite useful. I'm going to use them, and this is the only way that you can use them, as area denial. So they'll be, depending on the map and deployment, they'll be in my deployment zone, just blocking up space so that deep strikers can't get in. I'm going to have some, or at least one or maybe two, near the Technomancer at the back. He's going to be at the back babysitting the Doomstalkers. So if I keep one of the stones near him, then obviously I can redeploy them if I need to. That's basically all the stones are going to be doing. My Scarabs, my Doomstalkers are going to be at the back taking backfield objectives. The stones are going to be at the back denying space for my opponent to deep strike in, and the rest of the army's just going to be going forward taking the midfield objectives. Overall, I think I've done quite well with this list, and I'm really looking forward to playing it, and of course I will be making a battle report on the list as well. But let me know what you think of my list in the comments box below. In the meantime, if you want to see my Annihilation list building video, here it is for you to watch, and here's a playlist featuring battle reports with that Annihilation Legion.